Is Brian Cage coming to AEW Double or Nothing? Guys, we have a major update to the situation. I have an image that pretty much guarantees that Brian Cage will be in this match. It goes along with all the facts that we've learned there this far. I'm excited about it. I think Brian Cage coming to AEW is exciting. But I also have a major update. If you guys didn't see on Dynamite, Rey Fenix was injured, and now there's a couple rumors of what they might do in regards to him being in the ladder match. So I do want to talk about that as well. So let's kind of start with that. If you guys didn't know, Rey Fenix on AEW Dynamite suffered an injury. Had a really cool looking spot. He was supposed to be caught midair by like 4 or 5 different guys ringside. If you guys saw the moment, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He took a very nasty fall with nobody catching him. And now reports are coming out that suggest Rey Fenix will not be competing at Double or Nothing, which is a very, very big blow because personally, I think Rey Fenix has done a really, really good job with Lucha Bros and Pac. And I think everything they're doing with Death Triangle has just been incredible. And during this pandemic, I think what we're seeing between Rey Fenix and Orange Cassidy has been really cool. So I feel like that being part of the ladder match would have been really exciting. But now, with reports coming out that Rey Fenix will not be in the match, obviously he's going to have a replacement. So one thing that I find to be very incredible here, and especially because we're going to be talking about Brian Cage, and I have an image to show you guys, so I will show that image in a little bit. But everything about Brian Cage being the ninth surprise, AEW obviously has to have a plan B for Rey Fenix. And I think when you look at that roster, there's not a lot of people, honestly, that I would have as his replacement. During the media call today, AEW pretty much confirmed that 90% of the card is exactly what it was supposed to be prior to the pandemic happening. So they didn't do too many changes to the card. So this more than likely was always the plan. I think AEW doesn't have a lot of guys who could step up for a big time match like this, especially because they're not credible. So I do see AEW doing another debut. So I think there's going to be 2 debuts in this match. And it's funny because in this previous video, we didn't know any of these facts. We didn't know anything for sure, but I predicted that Drew Gulak would be in this match. I now for certain believe that Drew Gulak will replace Rey Fenix in this match. And I think that will be a major distraction for the real winner of this match, who is Brian Cage. Guys, my name is Ango. This is Destination Pro Wrestling. I'm always bringing you guys my own analysis on the news and rumors that's out there for Impact, WWE, AEW, New Japan, all that good stuff. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you want more. All the little blah, 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 all that stuff's in the description down below. Drop a comment. Let me know what you guys think. So yes, I still believe that Drew Gulak will be at AEW Double or Nothing. No EC3, no Revival, none of those guys, because there's still a 90-day clause that applies to them. Drew Gulak was not released. Drew Gulak was expired contract. He's not tailored to a contract. He's not on a 90-day clause. So therefore, Drew Gulak does not owe WWE a commitment, even if Drew Gulak wants to sign with WWE again, which is being rumored. And this is why I'm bringing this up. If Drew Gulak wanted to fill in for AEW to be part of this match, one-time appearance, paid per appearance, and then literally next week go back to WWE television, he has the absolute ability to do that. And I could see that happening because there are rumors that Drew Gulak could very well be back in WWE once they get the contract sorted out, because WWE might be willing to give him more money. At this time, he's not being paid because he's not under contract. He can help AEW out on a short notice. He gets a little bit of money. AEW has a really good wrestler in this match to take over Rey Fenix's job. And then on top of that, you give the poker chip to Brian Cage. So guys, let's take a look at that image, because now this is where things get juicy. All right, so this is an image of the 9-man ladder match. This is for the graphic. Now, in between Kip Sabian and Colt Cabana, it's very, very interesting because if you look at this cutout, it absolutely resembles Brian Cage. Now, previously, probably 6, 7, 8 months ago, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I talked about it on this channel that Brian Cage was headed to AEW. A lot of people, for some reason, didn't believe me. They said, no, it was not going to happen. I heard internally that Brian Cage was done with Impact. Then, of course, Brian Cage gets injured on his final episode of Impact. Because he got injured, he was not able to debut for AEW. And this is why things get even crazier. Because now Brian Cage is apparently cleared. Brian Cage is injury free. Brian Cage has the ability to come back. Brian Cage is not contractually obligated to Impact, and on top of that, Brian Cage looks exactly like this thing. So if you guys take a look right there, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. That looks like Brian Cage. And sometimes AEW does put in some Easter eggs, but I think AEW is at a point where, 500 to 600,000 viewers, even though it's good, it could still be better. And I think they know the potential is there. This, obviously, without spoiling it, kind of gets people excited for the idea that Brian Cage could be there. Maybe it might increase pay-per-view buys. I don't think this was an Easter egg to fool people. I think they want people to know that Brian Cage is AEW bound. And let's be honest, I've been a huge fan of Brian Cage and his work in Impact Wrestling, and honestly, I would have preferred to see him stay at Impact. But nonetheless, Brian Cage going to AEW is a big deal, and I'm going to tell you guys why. AEW, since the beginning, has always had the complaint that they didn't have big guys. Months later, they have Lance Archer, they have Brody Lee, Jon Moxley, Chris Jericho, Jake Hager. I mean, there's a lot of guys that you can list. Luchasaurus being another one, Wardlow. But then you look at that roster and you say, yeah, there's not that many big names. Brian Cage is a big name. It's just really weird how he's usually overshadowed by the fact that he's never been a top guy in WWE. For some reason, people discount Impact Wrestling, which is truly unfair. But Brian Cage did some incredible work at Impact Wrestling. Despite being injury prone, he still had great moments. And I think AEW not only gets a big guy who could join this roster, but they get a big guy who's never been a main eventer in WWE. He's not really, obviously he did like developmental and stuff, but he's never really been the guy in WWE. He's never been a Drew Gulak or a Jake Hager or something like that. So now AEW gets somebody with experience who has a lot of skill. A lot of fans are going to love him, and now they're going to be able to bring him in and kind of mold him into an AEW guy. And I think that is incredible. And I think down the line, years from now, depending on his health and how he looks, he could very well be in the market again. And whether WWE wants to open up that checkbook, time will tell. But WWE, for some reason, never wanted to take that next step with him. And I think their loss, and at this point, Impact and WWE's loss, is AEW's gain. So AEW has listened to the fans. They consistently listen to the fans. And I think them signing Brian Cage, having Brian Cage win this match, and immediately shoot him up to the top of the card is an incredibly big deal. My only thing is whether or not Brian Cage will be feuding with Jon Moxley or Brody Lee. Those feuds with Brian Cage, quite honestly, they don't intrigue me yet. And I say that because I don't know how AEW would pull it off either way. I feel like I'd be a little bit more intrigued by Brian Cage and Moxley versus Brody Lee and Brian Cage. But nonetheless, I don't know how AEW could pull it off. And in fact, I've even said that I feel like AEW kind of cornered themselves putting Moxley and Brody Lee together. So I'm intrigued to see what happens. I think that's the beautiful thing about AEW. Sometimes what you see doesn't always make a lot of sense, but it ends up working its way out. I think Brody Lee versus Moxley is very slept on, but I think if Brian Cage does in fact win the poker chip and he becomes the number one contender immediately, I think it's going to be some pretty incredible stuff. And when you look at the way AEW does rankings, that win will be a lot more important than many of the other guys who have wins and losses already in 2020. So I am absolutely intrigued to see what happens. But Brian Cage debuting at AEW Double or Nothing, to me, it's exciting. I'm really excited to see how they figure out the Rey Fenix situation. But Brian Cage at this point seems to be a lock. And if you guys want to see that image again, this is what it looks like. So I think you guys know that looks like Brian Cage. And guys, anybody who is saying Zack Ryder, Kurt Hawkins, EC3, they still got their 90 days. They have about 60 days left within their 90-day no-compete. So if you're looking at a WWE debut, the only one that really makes sense is Drew Gulak at this point. Nonetheless, I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. There's been some new merch that has dropped, so you guys should be able to find that. And if you guys want to subscribe, comment, support the show, DPW Plus, all that good stuff, guys, all that information is down below. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing. We're about to close in on 26,000 subscribers. You guys have been incredible. AEW Double or Nothing predictions should be up this weekend before the pay-per-view. So make sure you guys stay tuned, and I'll see you next time. Peace.